Our guest today, as we delve into the murky issue of child abuse, is Christopher Lartey. He's a senior program officer at the Department of Children, Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection. Also with us is Berma Mankwa. He is the national coordinator in Ghana for the NGO Coalition on the Rights of the Child. Gentlemen, it's good to have you both. Thank you very much for making the time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I wish we had a more pleasant topic to discuss, but we don't. Here at Joy News, we launched a campaign last year, Justice for Kids, because we were alarmed at the growing rate of child abuse. The Central Region gave us 2 or 3 horrifying stories last year, but statistics tell us that actually the highest incidence is here in the Greater Accra region, followed by Kumasi, and then Central Region, and other regions follow. Massive numbers. Last year alone, 686 children were defiled, and these are the ones that reported it. The problem is getting worse. How are we failing? I want to start with you, Christopher, if you don't mind. Where are we getting it wrong as a country?
Good afternoon to viewers. We are alarmed at the ministry at the rate of which defilement cases are increasing. And whether we are getting something wrong is so obvious. Government is doing everything possible through its agencies, DOFSU, the whole police force, the Ghana Health Service, and many other government institutions to make sure that we identify these things and make sure that the culprits are brought to book. But it keeps on increasing. So I think it boils down to the fact that we have to intensify efforts so that parents will be able to take care of their children, because everything happens at that level. Governments at the highest level will make sure that the laws are good, institutions are working, personnel are there to make sure that these things are followed up with and all that. But where we are actually getting it wrong, we believe, is at the family level. So I think that's what is happening now.
Tell us what you mean. What's going wrong at the family level?
There was a survey conducted which led into the development of the Child and Family Welfare Policy. And the survey actually identified that many of these cases are as a result of neglect at the local level, at the community level. So then that's how come we came up with the name Child and Family Welfare Policy, because as much as we want to protect the child also is located within the context of the family. So if the child is catered for, every need is always followed up with visits at school, and for the case of this young boy, if the teachers get to follow up with the children every now and then the child is going to be protected. Many a times when the children are neglected at that level, that's when these things happen to them. And indeed, we can have the best of structures. If the children are neglected at the family level, these things are bound to happen. Yeah.
Now, I wonder, Berma, if you agree with Christopher's assertion that government is doing everything it can. I mean, he's identified a very important problem, which is the family situation. So many examples of how family does not help when it comes to fighting child abuse. We'll talk a bit more about that. But first thing Christopher said to us was that government is doing all it can. Do you agree?
I think I will say that government is doing most of the things that they can, but not all the things, because there are a lot of things that needs to be done that perhaps because of our inadequate resources, we have not been able to come to the delivery of it. So yes, government is doing something, but it's not all that government is doing, that we can put in that perspective.
All right, so tell us more. What is it that government can do in addition to what they do today?
I think when it comes to sexual abuses or abuses of children in general, one of the elements that we have not tackled is the channel of communication. which is very critical. At the house, if a child is abused at the house, how do even the child communicate? And how do the child even let the issue out? That is very critical. Secondly, is the element of reporting, the point of reporting. Because within our homes, if you want to address situations or if you want to address issues and you don't have a foundation that is supporting the mechanisms, then it's going to be challenging. Why am I saying that? One, we need to look at how our social services respond to issues when issues of abuse and other things happen. Then we translate it to the school. How do the school system create an enabling environment to ensure that when issues happen at the school, the reporting mechanism in such a way that the students are not victimized? All these things we have not. Then we look at generality. In society, when element of abuse happens, how do the society see the child? Why did you go there? You are a bad girl. You are a bad boy. The stigmatization. So we have not been able to put up a mechanism to address, or when children are able to voice out, so that we'll be able to protect them. But always we look at the defensive. And one of the things that we have also not done so much is the kind of support we give to our children. Critically, if a child goes through this abuse, I know definitely most of the times the focus is going to be on the perpetrator. But we tend to forget about the psychological difficulty that these children are going to go through. What kind of counseling services, psychosocial services are we putting in place to ensure that when these children go through these difficulties, they are what? Help out. All those things are things that as a nation, we have really not been able to put them together. And we need to really look at that.
Now, I want to challenge you both a little bit, and I'll start with you, Berima, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Imani, IEA, IDEG, these are all civil society organizations, CDD. They are civil society organizations that we hear loudly in society, whether they are fighting anti-corruption or whether they are speaking up about economic activity. We hear them vociferously. They raise funds, they organize events, they get out there, their message is heard. Their leaders and members have become household names because of the amount of advocacy that they do. I have got to say, when it comes to child rights NGOs, it's more of a whisper than a growl. What is the problem? Why can't you be as vociferous as some of these other organizations?
I would say we are doing much as we can. Just that issues about children are not priorities within the media circle, and that has been the challenge. Because
we have never at Joy FM launched a campaign for a better economy, but we've launched campaigns for children.
And that's something.
So the media cares about children.
That's why I'm coming on that. If you look at the early 20s, you realize that issues of children were really not on the table of, what do you call it, agenda setting. So that is the first thing that we need to look at it. Then secondly, when issues about children happens, the way and manner, for instance, media will want to follow to the latter, is also a concern. You get it? Because if an issue about children happen, if we are going to attach so much importance as we are attaching to corruption, as we are attaching to other developmental issues, and we are all supporting, we are going to make effort to ensure that we are going to get to the tail of it. I, for once, have said that I'm the type that will always want to speak with the media and ensure that they follow to the latter. There's a story that your other station, Adam, shared with me. Nobody gave me resources, but I made sure that every time I'm making those follow-up, because those are the little ones that if you don't take care of it, it begins to explode. So we need to begin to get attention and ensure that the little opportunities, like you are mentioning, I'm very heartfelt when I heard of the launch that you did. And I think if every media house is taking one element of child protection issues, this one is taking child marriage, this one is taking corporal punishment, within a week, within a month, within a year, we would have done a lot of education, we would have done a lot of sensitization, and we have done a lot of advocacy on government. This is what is missing. So the little opportunity that Joy will give it to us, Joy have its own listeners. The listeners will get the knowledge, will get the information. But beyond Joy, where do we go next?
So to be clear, you're saying that we don't hear much from you because of the media?
I'm saying that we are not getting the opportunity like Joy is giving to really go out and talk about, because we may look at more from the perspective of prevention.
So tell me, how many times have you asked the media house, oh, I want to talk about this, or we have a statement, please share it, or we have an event, please cover it, and the media has said, no, we don't care about children, we won't come?
We do most of the times.
And the media refuse to cover it?
A lot of them refuse to come, others come. Here in Joy, I have people that usually we talk, there's an issue, I said, can we discuss this? And they're able to follow up. Other media houses, this issue, can we make a follow-up? And they do. And that is the response that they want.
Okay. Christopher,
Yeah.
Your first statement was that the government is doing all that it can. But I want us to walk through the various stages of child sexual abuse.
Okay.
First of all, the fact that a grown man can see a young child as a potential sex partner, that lack of education, that lack of awareness, and that belief that they'll get away with it, that is our first failure to the child. Then the person actually goes ahead and abuses the child. And the child, in many cases, the people who abuse the child are a person in the child's circle, the child's life.
Yeah.
So the child is now abused, and they inform the family. The family calls the abuser. They sit down and have some kind of conference. Plantain is exchanged, and the matter is killed.
Yeah.
The fact that a family can feel that that is even an option available to them, that they can discuss a crime and settle it with plantain, that is another failure.
Yeah.
Then some children are bold enough or fortunate enough to have their case reported. And the minute they report it, they are told to go and do, what's it called, an examination.
Yeah.
And they have to pay 200 Ghana cedis.
Sometimes more.
Sometimes more. To get examined. When they are a victim of a crime, they must pay
Yeah.
for the evidence that will hopefully get them justice. They must pay. That is our third, and perhaps for me the most grievous failure. Then during the court system, we don't have specialized courts for children. I hear there are some coming up. I'm very happy to hear about that. But till now, we don't have specialized courts. Judges and clerks and court officials have no training on how to deal with child abuse cases. So a child is taken through a horrifying experience, all in a bid to seek justice. Justice which unfortunately comes with stigma for the child, because they are not protected properly and their identity in many cases is revealed. Then finally, the person is found guilty and usually given a sentence which is less than you would give to someone who stole a goat. So we fail the child again. So it appears that as a society, we take every opportunity to fail the child. Yet you say you are doing everything you can.
Yeah.
You yourself, do you believe it?
As I mentioned, we are doing everything that we can to help every child. In the first instance, we wish that nothing of this nature happens. I mentioned that we have a child and family welfare policy. That is a policy that was developed to prevent, make sure that systems are in place at the local level, community level, family level, and linked up with all social interventions so that every child will be in school, health insurance for every child, and many others. Now we also have the Justice for Children policy. These are twin policies that we are using. And the Justice for Children policy is dealing with victims of abuses like these, witnesses, and then perpetrators, because children sometimes also commit those crimes. Now, the difficulties you mentioned, indeed, the family is one of the major problems that in terms of seeking justice for children, that we ourselves as governments are finding it difficult to deal with. Honestly, issues happen and it is never reported to any state agency, be it the police, social welfare, departments of children, or even the CSOs. So in most of our advocacy campaigns, we tell them there are some civil cases that chiefs can handle, family heads can handle. But criminal cases, defilement, rape, all those things are supposed to be handled by the state. So the Attorney General will have to go to court and defend the child. If the case is never reported, then there is little that social welfare can do, the police can do.
Wait, are you saying social welfare cannot report a case to the police?
Oh, no. I mean, if the case is not identified by the social worker or reported to the office, if every citizen can do reporting.
So let me ask you this. Not so long ago, here in the Greater Accra region, there was a story of a family where the father has had a child with his first daughter and impregnated the second one. I'm sure you heard of it. Adum FM reported it. Now I'm told that at some point this matter has been dropped because the mother has refused to take the case further. Why is it up to the mother? I thought we live in a country where crimes are committed against the state.
Exactly.
So what's happening there? Do you even know of this case and where it is right now?
Unfortunately, I don't know the status of that case. But as I'm mentioning, that's the major difficulty we have. And I don't know, the cases are sometimes withdrawn from the court, from the police. And the issue,
that's the thing I can't
yes,
wrap my head
I
around.
agree.
How can you withdraw a criminal case
it's not supposed to be
from the police?
I handled
and why does the ministry allow that to happen?
I handled a case like that. There was no evidence. We went to the police, the hospital, forensic audit was done on the child. There was not even a single evidence to pin this guy down to send the case to court. So in that case, you cannot proceed. And without evidence,
if that's the situation you have, that's not the fault of the family. If there's no evidence, that's not the family's fault, is it? How is it the family's fault?
No, in that case, because they did not report.
So too much time passed.
Yes, so that's one. But back to the family. The family, based on the background of the family and how important some persons in the family are, the cases, they always tell you order from above and all those things. Cases are sometimes withdrawn.
Above what?
A police commander will call somebody at the counter and tell the person, blah, 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 this has happened, this case, I want to handle it at this level. It happens.
You have a minister. Why does the minister allow the police to do this?
The police is under the Ministry of Interior. Indeed, I suppose, this I'm not very sure, but I suppose. Is
the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection also under the Ministry of Interior?
No.
Good.
No.
So what's the problem?
But we all have our mandates. Every ministry has its own mandate. Your mandate
is to protect children.
Children.
So if a police officer is failing to protect a child, what do you do?
Kojo, what is happening? If you query, the best you can do is to ask questions, because it's a whole ministry. They also have their way of doing things. You have sister organizations. What will happen in your institution remains, because you are doing it based on the constitutional mandate you've been given. Okay, so what is happening in the Ministry of Gender, we will follow up to a point. If a report is given from the Ministry of Interior that this is the reason why this case is being handled this way, it ends it. If the family want to go forward to another, to court or something, it is allowed. You see,
Christopher, forgive me, but this sounds like an admission that your ministry is ineffective when it comes to protecting children.
Not at all.
Because if a police officer can say an order from above says I should not investigate this crime any longer, and that ends it, then what's the point of your
ministry? The ministry will write to the ministry, to the Ministry of Interior, to the Ghana Police Service, and then we require a report and a status of that thing.
So a lot of letters and a lot of reports. Meanwhile, the child remains defiled.
Oh, yes.
In the case that we're discussing in Accra, 2 children been impregnated by their father. I don't know what other evidence you require. So if the police say we won't investigate, and the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection says yes, sir, okay.
No, let me make this one clear. We also do investigations. We also send our team on the ground, social welfare. The ministry is big. We have the Department of Children, the Department of Social Welfare, Department of Gender, and other secretariats. We send them on the ground to do investigations, and they send a report to the minister. Then we liaise with the Ministry of Interior to do the investigations, and we depend on them because it is their mandate to do investigation and do prosecution. So if they give a report back and tell the ministry that upon investigating, this and this are the outcomes, so we advise that we'll do this and this. I mean, what else? It's a whole government machinery.
A whole government machinery which in some way, in the middle of all you're doing, are failing to protect the child.
Well,
but I'm afraid I can't really let you off the hook either, Berima. You know, you and your organizations, because it appears to me that there are so many gaps in the system, so many failures of the system that civil society can prop up, so many holes that you can fill. I don't know how many shelters there are right now for victims of abuse, especially young ones who are abused by people in their community, and while that person is out on bail, you know, the child has to live in the same place, or, you know, the headmaster or the teacher has abused them, and the child still has to be in the same school. That protection that a child requires during the process of having their case heard. Surely there must be several opportunities there for organizations like yours to raise funds, gather, you know, mobilize and help children in that situation. Why don't we see it?
I think it's a country challenge that we are all trying to abreast ourselves with it. As a coalition, what we do is to complement the effort of government and ensure that government is doing what is expected of him in respect to the implementation of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, as well as the African Charter and the Rights and Welfare of Children, and other legal instruments that government is going to bring on board. Most of the times, as a coalition, what we have done to support these kids is to go as a friend to the court. So as a friend to the court, what we do is that we look for lawyers that is going to stand on behalf of these children to ensure that these cases are come to an end before we will leave the matter, because that is the only thing that we can do, because we cannot force government that go and do this or go on. They know that it's their responsibility to do that. So what we can do is to be a friend of the child and ensure that we do the follow-up. We have also done a lot of mediation, going to schools to talk to school authorities to let them know that, no, these are the things, the law that we have, these are the policies that we have, and these are the things that we are supposed to do on behalf of children. So you cannot sit at your school and use your own rules. As a country, we have a law that we are using. And for children, the first law is the Children's Act. Then we come to the Justice for Children, Juvenile Justice, and other things. So those are the things that we have been doing to ensure that children have the backup.
And you were explaining to us that the laws that protect children are in a certain order. You started with the Children's Act. Actually, before that, there's the Constitution.
The Constitution, thank you very much. So then we come to the Justice for Children. Then we come to Juvenile Justice Act. Then we have the Child and Family Welfare. We have now have the adoption. So we have different laws that is there. The Trafficking Act. Then you have the National Plan of Action for the Elimination of Child Marriage, as well as child labor. So we have all this framework there. So if the teachers or the community is looking at the development of children, all this should be embedded in it, so that we will look at what we call the best interest of the child. So we are looking at the total development of the child. For us as coalition, we have our members in most of the regions as well as the district. So when some of these feeds come, what we do is that they do the follow-up, they report to us, and then we also do the necessary follow-up to ensure that issues of children are really resolved at the community level, for community members to understand that as parents, as guardians, we have the primary responsibility of taking care of our children. In the worst scenario, is what we'll be looking at government to see what government is also going to do. Beyond that, we have also been engaging in the community leaders, because it's very critical. If we tighten our family system to ensure that our nuclear family, our extended family, and even the community structures are well built up, government will be having less to do. So this is the thing that we have been doing to ensure that we do a lot of education so that people will understand it. But as we always say, our hands cannot cover the face of God. So the little that we can do, we are doing it.
Right. I hope your two organizations work closely together.
Yes, indeed.
Because, look, we need all hands on deck on this. The Constitution says that in all things, the interests of the child must be put first. But, I mean, we're putting a lot of things before the child. And it's just untenable, unconscionable that as a society we can't protect the most vulnerable among us. So let's all work together. The media also has a role to play. Let's hope that we can all play our roles better for the sake of the child. Thank you both very much.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Indeed, indeed.